Welcome to this introduction on logical typing and logical levels. In referring to logical typing, we're referring to how we make categories, how we recognize similarities and differences between objects, ideas, concepts, people, and things. Being able to categorize things into groups that seem similar and naming them as such allows us to have a certain degree of control over them. However, if our categorization processes, if our logical typing becomes logically inconsistent, or illogical if you like, then it can cause us problems. Let's have a look at the next few slides to see what we mean by logical typing. This slide asks what the objects at the bottom of the screen, apple, pear and banana, have in common. You've probably already got an idea. Another way of asking this question is, how would you classify or categorize these objects? Many people would classify or categorize these objects as fruit. That seems fairly logical and straightforward. What's interesting is, what did we have to do to come up with the label fruit? To take this question a bit further, let's answer the question at the top of the screen. What else could be in the same category as fruit? But that also invites another question. Before we answer it, think about it this way. Apples, pears and bananas are all examples of the things that belong in the category fruit. So now if we ask what could be in the same category as fruit, we're asking of what is fruit an example and what would be other logically consistent examples. For those of you who like maths or remember maths, we could be talking about a set of things. To what set does fruit belong? You can see that apple, pear and banana belong to a set called fruit, or a category called fruit. So that question that's just appeared is asking what we had. What would fruit be an example of? And we could say food. Fruit definitely is one type of food. Other types of food include meat and vegetables. Now if we want to take this up another level of abstraction, notice we've talked about levels, so each one of these categories has been formed so far by logically typing things. That is, looking at the characteristics and deciding what kind of label can we give to the set that the things belong to, or the category, or if you just more common day-to-day language, what group of things. So to repeat, apple, pear and banana are examples of the set of things called fruit, or the category of fruit. Meat, fruit and vegetables logically fit in a category called food. It's not the only category they could fit in, by the way. Now, what could be in the same category as food? So it's getting more abstract now. You may have more options and it may take a bit more thinking to work out what would be in the same category as food, because we actually have to decide on the category first by going up another level of abstraction. One possible answer could be water and air. Now you can probably imagine that there are a range of different categories that these could fit into. The one that's being suggested here is survival needs. That does seem to be logically consistent, and this is a point that is important in this whole process, is making sure that our categorization processes are logically consistent. It's true that we all need water, food and air to survive, or more specifically oxygen, I suppose you could put there. Air will do for the moment. Meat, fruit and vegetables are all forms of food. An apple, pear and banana are all forms of fruit. If, for example, in food category we put tables, that would be logically inconsistent. And of course, we've already hinted at this, but there are different ways to categorize things. There's not just one way of categorizing things, and there are two ways that people actually get themselves into bother with categorizing. The first is thinking that there is only one way. The main thing is the categorization process, the logical typing and the organizing into logical levels is logically consistent. But we could quite easily say that apple, pear and banana all belong to a group of things that we could label as healthy food. Lots of other things do too, but these are definitely three examples of what we could label as healthy food, as long as you're not having too many pieces of them in any one day, because that wouldn't be good for your sugar levels. And if we wanted to continue this different pattern, we could go rest and physical activity. And these all could quite logically fit in a category of things called things that are essential for physical health. You definitely need healthy food, you definitely need physical activity, and you definitely need appropriate forms of and amounts of rest. Taking it up another level, and looking at not only physical health but emotional health and intellectual or cognitive health, we could classify those all under elements of well-being, or essential components of well-being, or essential concepts within well-being. But we could have another option. Here's something a little bit different. We still believe it's logically consistent, but probably not what a lot of people would expect. If you cut through an apple or pear or banana in the right direction, you'll find they all have a circular, or roughly circular, cross-section. Other things in this group could be foods with a geometrically irregular cross-section, or foods with a rectangular cross-section. And now we're looking at geometric features in food. Maybe it's a little off the wall, this one, or a little from left field, whatever metaphor you want to use, but up to a point it's reasonably consistent in its logic. We could also look at geometric features in manufactured objects or in geological specimens. These could just fit under the study of geometry, or, as we put here, elements of design. That's if you'd like to categorize geometric features as elements that are incorporated when we're designing things. This one's a little bit different and not so obvious as the first one, where we had apple, pear and banana and food and as in fruit I should say, and meat and vegetables as food and so on. But still, we could allow this on some occasions where it would be appropriate. So summarising, here are 2 points. I'll let you read them. The important thing, of course, is now, what happens if someone uses logically inconsistent logical typing or confuses types with levels? The rest of the slides in this section mainly look at the first part, logically inconsistent logical typing, but you will see confusion of levels of abstraction as well. So take some time to look through this one and see what could be different. It gets interesting when we start to talk about things like leadership. So we've started here with leader behaviours. And the suggestion we're offering is that there are 2 things that might be better placed some in different positions, or 2 things that we could swap. Recognising this, of course, there's much greater levels of or degrees of freedom in how you might interpret these things. But you start to look at the degree of specificity and how easily can you actually imagine seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling or tasting the thing, or how abstract is it? I'll give you a hint on this one. efficient behaviours, that looking along the bottom, maintaining a tidy desk is clearly an efficient behaviour, or could be an efficient behaviour. Answering emails promptly could be an efficient behaviour, and also it is an observable behaviour. Updating a to-do list is an observable behaviour, but is good self-management an observable behaviour? Or does it involve a number of things, not only a range of behaviours, not just one specific behaviour, but also attitudes, ideas, beliefs, etc. Let's see what our suggestion is. We're suggesting that good self-management would be better off up in that higher level where it's circled and completing tasks by a deadline, which is an observable behaviour, would be better off in a category of things that can be efficient behaviours. In a follow-up to this one, we'll start looking at sets, because you'll also recognise that while completing tasks by a deadline is normally considered an efficient behaviour, the invitation now is to consider, is it possible that on occasions completing a task by deadline could be an inefficient behaviour? So could the one behaviour belong to two different categories, depending on how we're looking at things and categorising things? That's just food for thought for the moment. Now, let's have a look at this one. This is somebody thinking about some of the elements of what's involved when designing a report. And if you're going to design a report, you definitely do need to think about the report structure, you need to think about its purpose, its audience, elements like the introduction and the body. There's something that seems to be very clearly out of place in this with respect to the level of abstraction and where it's placed. I'll give you a hint. Is plan is it of the same logical type as the body of a report and the introduction of a report? The answer is no. What we're suggesting is better is to move design there and think about all of this as elements or things we'll think of in planning. When we plan, we think about who's the audience, what's the purpose of the report, what's the actual physical layout of the report, what's its structuring going to be like, and also what are the design elements like the font, choice of colours, following a style guide, etc. And of course within the report structure you would typically have at least three elements: an introduction, a body and a conclusion. And here's another one. Active listening. So the suggestion is that there are at least three things we can put as processes, if you like, or sets of skills in active listening: meta-modelling, rapport skills, and meeting people in their world. And rapport, of course, as you already know, has two large chunks in it: pacing and leading. One chunk of pacing is matching and mirroring. But is multi-tracking part of pacing? Well, yes, but it's also part of leading. So perhaps we need to move some of these, at least two of these, around. Meeting people in their world is normally part of pacing. So we match and mirror people when we're pacing them, but we also take into account their culture, their values, their beliefs, to the extent that we might know those. We take into account when and where we're meeting them, the context, and is it early in the week or early in the day or late in the week or late in the day, and the attendant energy and mood levels that go with those things. So it's probably much more appropriate and more logically consistent to have meeting people in their world as part of pacing and multi-tracking as a skill set that is an essential part of active listening.